Hello and welcome to another edition of the Stogie Review video review. I am Walt White and back once again for another short ashes video. Now you're probably wondering, well, why are you doing short ashes on a Friday? You generally do those on a Saturday. Well, I had some things going on this week and I completely forgot that I have some stuff scheduled on the night that I generally do these reviews, and then I had some other stuff that I needed to take care of. And if it wasn't for my wife, I may not have even gotten the short ashes taken care of. So for the time being, I've got a shorter review because it takes far less time to complete, edit, upload, all that good stuff, and hopefully I'll be able to wrap up the standardized review for Saturday. So with that in mind, I'm going to jump right into the video with the cigar of the week, more or less, and that is a cigar that is in production but kind of not really, from what I understand, and that is the Arganese Nicaraguan Presidente. Now the reason I say kind of but not really is because Arganese was doing some stuff with the naming of their cigars. It was getting kind of confusing, and as you can see, I'm still not getting any better at this focusing thing on the camera. But at any rate, Arganese had some confusing stuff going on with the naming. There were Presidentes, chairmans, and ambassadors, and depending on which one you purchased, you were getting a different strength cigar. Now, from what I understand, the Presidente only came, or the Nicaraguan only came in one version. I think it was the Presidente, but something like their Connecticut was available in three quote-unquote namings, like the Presidente, the ambassador, and the chairman, and each one was stepped in strength. So it was becoming very confusing for people looking to purchase Arganese cigars, because that sub-name had nothing to do with the size. It had everything to do with the strength profile of the cigar, the body of it. So in order to reduce the confusion, they trimmed up those names, and I think they are all one standard naming now. Possibly even two. I'm not quite sure. I haven't looked up information on Arganese cigars in a little while. I just remember when all that went down and just how the naming changed. So with that said, this cigar should still be available. It may have a slightly different name, but it is available. So let's dive right into looking over the aesthetics of the cigar. And the first thing I'm looking at is the color. Color is consistent from head to foot. I don't have any variations. There's no dark spots, light spots. It's very consistent. The texture of the wrapper is fairly smooth. There's a couple of medium-sized veins, but they don't protrude too much, and it's sort of just rolling around your hand. It doesn't feel overly textured. Now, just sort of holding it up to the light, there doesn't appear to be much of an oily sheen to it. I've got a tiny little bit of plume developing, a little bit of crystallized oils. They're just sort of in random spots. This cigar's been sitting since I did the initial review, probably a year ago, maybe a little bit more than that. So it's been sitting around a little while, and this is actually my last one. The cap looks pretty decent. It's lifting in one spot. It looks like they used a generous amount of wrapper. It's forced down over the shoulder of the cigar a good distance. If you've ever looked at a Padron, sometimes they look really shallow. It looks like the cap's kind of tiny and they just kind of pluck it right on top there, and it's really easy to cut it completely off. But in this case, it looks like it rolls down and goes beyond the shoulder pretty good. Just sort of fondling it in the hand, it feels pretty firm. Actually, it feels quite hard, like there's a ton of tobacco packed into the cigar. I'm not getting any soft spots. The cigar just feels uniformly hard. And looking at the foot, I'm not seeing much space. It looks like it's fairly compacted. So that may in turn lead to a stiff draw, but I'll never know until I open it up. So I'm going to get started with that. and the draw is pretty free. Actually, it's kind of surprising. For as firm as the cigar felt and the way the foot looked, I really expected the draw to be pretty firm, but it's very free flowing. There's a little bit of resistance to it, so it shouldn't be overly free or overly loose. So I'm going to go ahead and get the cigar lit and get this review underway. Well, it's lit. Wasn't very difficult. Lit right up. It's burning evenly. Initial impressions is cigar tastes a little woody. It's mildly dry, but I'm getting lots of smoke, and the flavor is really flowing across the palate. So sit tight. I'll be back. We'll get started on the first third of my Arganese Nicaraguan Presidente, and we'll see how this cigar turns out. Alright, well, welcome back. I'm plugging right along, actually a little bit further than I'd like to be on my Arganese Nicaraguan Presidente. As you can see, the ash is nice and tight. It's very compact. The burn line's a little wavy, but it's a little wavy and it's a little thick, but I think it's well within reason. It's under control. Nice firm tap on the ashtray, knocked the ash clear off. I've got sort of like a vertical end of the cigar. I don't have any coning action, but there's no tunneling or anything like that. So it appears to be burning very well. Actually, I may have been talking just a little bit too long. It's nearly out. I'm actually multitasking right now. Sam Lucia from Nub Cigars is doing a live webcast. And I found out about that tonight, so I'm trying to get the Short Ashes review in, post some questions, and hear Sam's answers, all while trying to get this all taken care of. But as far as the cigar goes, it's a little spicy through the sinuses, a little bit of pepper. It seems just a tiny bit rough around the edges. It's got a very smooth flavor profile. By a little rough around the edges, I mean like the spice and the pepper just seem to be a touch too much for the flavor, especially through the sinuses. I'm getting a tiny bit of a tickle in the back of my throat. The flavor profile is just sort of just a natural tobacco flavor. It's pretty straightforward. Maybe a little bit of an earthy flavor, but nothing overly complex. Nothing that's really jumping out at me, grabbing my attention. The finish is fairly smooth. Again, it's a little bit rough. It lasts about a minute on the palate. It's mildly creamy. The body is probably medium, maybe medium to full, but that's probably pushing it just a little bit. And the smoke volume is great. You know, I'm getting lots of dense smoke. It's easy to get through the sinuses. I'm not picking up any sort of room aroma that's offensive. Actually, it's sort of neutral. I'm not really noticing anything at all. And, you know, the burn rate seems about average. You know, I'm not really staring at the clock or anything, but it feels right. I don't feel like I'm burning too fast, burning too slow. It's so far the cigar is doing fairly well. The flavor profile is not really jumping up and grabbing my attention, but it's performing decent. So with that said, I'm going to take a break, smoke a little bit more of my Arganese Nicaraguan Presidente, and we'll see how the second third goes. So sit tight. All right, well, I'm back. It hasn't been too long since I cut the camera off last time, but cigar's burning very well. I've got a nice tightly compacted ash forming immediately. The burn line seems to have straightened out considerably. It's thinned out as well. The burn rate seems about average, and the resting smoke is about average as well. The smoke volume on the draw is fantastic. It's just very plentiful. It's very dense, easy to get through the sinuses. It's a type of smoke that's easy to blow with smoke rings and things like that. The flavor across the palate has become richer. That finish that was a little rough has seemed to have smoothed out a little bit. There's still some spice and pepper in the back of the throat, you know, just that little bit of a tinge. But it seems much smoother at this point. Like some of those rough edges sort of were rounded over, and the cigar is a little more easygoing now. The body seems to have picked up a little bit. It's closer to medium full now. Not quite full, but you can see it's sort of heading in that direction. And you know, the finish is becoming a little creamier. It's lingering on the palate a little bit longer. Just all in all, I'm happier now than I was earlier. I'm enjoying the progression of the cigar and where it's going. With any luck, it'll smooth out even more in the final third, become a little richer, and just all in all, the flavor profiles will be more enjoyable. I'm actually getting a little bit of leather out of the cigar now. The base seems to remain sort of a rich natural tobacco flavor, maybe a little earthy, but I'm getting in a little bit of a leathery flavor at this point, and not a whole lot else. The flavors are pretty straightforward. They're not really complex and difficult to pick apart. It's just some of them seem to be a little milder than others. You know, the primary flavor being that sort of a natural tobacco flavor is pretty upfront. It's the easy one to pick out. It is quote-unquote the primary flavor, or the primary one that I like to break these flavors down into. The secondary one would be more of a little bit of an earthy flavor, and then in the background there's a little bit of leather. But all in all, I'm enjoying it. It's going much better now than it was. You know, I thought it was going real bad before, but you know, I really like the direction that the cigar is taking. So with that said, I'm going to take another break. I'll be right back with the final third. You know, I'll go through that just like I did this one. I'll give you my overall opinion of the cigar, wrap things up, and I'll let you be on your way. Alright, well, I'm back, and it's about time to wrap up my Arganese Nicaraguan Presidente. You know, some of these names get kind of long, and it's tough to remember them at times. As you can see, I've got the toothpick out. It's a little premature for that, but the cigar seems to be getting a little warm, and the draw seems to have loosened up quite a bit, and I think that's where the added heat is coming from. I'm not getting any sort of harshness or bitterness from the heat. It's just a little uncomfortable on my fingers. Now, even though the draw is a little looser now, I'm still getting a ton of smoke. You know, sometimes when the draw tends to get really loose, you get more of an airy smoke. In this case, it's still pretty dense, and I'm not having any issue with you know, the smoke volume or the density or anything like that. The flavors are more or less the same as they were in the last third. I'm getting primarily just a rich natural tobacco flavor. I'm getting some earthiness, a little bit of leather, and that little bit of a tinge in the back of the throat from the pepper and spice is still there, and it's actually a little more prominent now than it was. The finish is fairly smooth. I mean, there's still a little bit of roughness to it, which is kind of surprising. With the cigar being in my humidor so long, I really expected it to mellow quite a bit. That little bit of harshness hasn't gone away, although the body has seemed to mellow a little bit. It's not quite as full as I remembered. It's still medium to full, but you know, going anything beyond that would sort of be pushing it. The burning characteristics of the cigar have been great. You know, earlier on I had a little bit of a wavy burn. It was kind of thick. Now it's thin. It's fairly straight and even. I mean, there's a little bit of waviness to it, but you know, it's well within reason. The smoke time has been pretty good. I mean, it's been probably an hour and 20 minutes, just sort of glancing at the clock and guessing. The burn rate seems about average for a cigar of this size. They generally take me about that long to smoke. The resting smoke is about average as well. The room is actually getting filled with smoke. my filter's not working quite as good as it should be, and it's about time to replace the filter. So as a result, I'm just sitting in a massive cloud of smoke at this point. But it's not irritating my eyes, it's not irritating my throat or my nose or anything like that. It's fairly unoffensive. And all in all, you know, I think it's a pretty decent cigar. With a price point at around $6.50, I don't think these are the best value around, but I definitely think it's a solid cigar, and it lives up to that price point fairly well. I mean, if these were around $5 cigars, I would say, yeah, these are great value. I'd go out and pick them up on a regular basis, or a semi-regular basis. But at $6.30 something plus your 40 cents for S-chip, you know, you're up at about $7. Now it requires a second thought before purchase. You know, one of the things I wanted to make mention about in this video was being indoors is quite a bit different trying to do these reviews. When I'm outside, I'm expecting distractions, and I expect the videos to be very short. You know, 12 minutes, 10 minutes, something like that, just because of the location. When I'm indoors, there's far less distractions, and I feel like these videos should be longer. So I glanced at the clock and I see, oh, I've only talked for 2 minutes. You know, I've got to stretch this out. You know, what do I do now? But trying to stay with the flow of these short actions, I want to try to keep them fairly short and just get through each third, you know, fairly quickly, and not draw this out into you know, the length of my standard reviews, which are running at about 27 minutes on average. Now, if you're familiar with my personal blog, waltonpa.com, I've been doing some videos there as well, and they've actually gotten tremendously long. The longest one I did was actually last week, and it was a first impressions video. Now you're probably wondering, well, why aren't these video reviews on Stogie Review? And the reason for that is I've got a disclaimer that goes with these first impressions reviews, and that is that I'm a firm believer in reviewing a cigar based on multiple samples. I don't like doing a cigar review based on one sample, because you know, you could get the exception out of the box, or you can get the dud, and you never know which one you got until you smoke more samples. So as a way to bolster the video content there, I'm doing these first impressions reviews to sort of create a video diary of my notes, so that I can look back on it later and do the full-length review, the proper review on Stogie Review. Having that video, you know, to look back on, plus, you know, 2, maybe 3 more samples that I've smoked and just generated, you know, opinion in my mind from. So if you're getting additional videos in the iTunes feed, that is why. And if you're wondering why, you know, people are making mention of seeing these extra videos in the feed, and you're not quite sure why they're popping up, it's because they're on Walton PA, and I'm purposely putting them inside the Stogie Review upload batch. Simply for one, it helps with exposure, and 2, it's formatted properly for the site, and we have an unlimited space allotment. So, you know, I can upload these videos forever, and, you know, we're never going to run out of bandwidth. And I've actually been having a little bit of trouble with Vidler lately. That's where I'm trying to put all the non-cigar related videos. So you know, putting these long videos on Blip TV ensures me that everything's going to work properly. I'm not going to have any issues. But the only downside is it may cause some confusion in the iTunes feed. And if you're seeing these videos and you're not seeing them on the site, that's why. And that's the disclaimer explaining why they're there and they're not here. But if you would prefer to see them and not head over to waltonpa.com, you can check out the Stogie Review video player. It's on the left sidebar. There's a link for it, and it plays all the videos in the feed. And it'll start with the last one and work its way backwards. So if you check that out, you actually may see some extra videos pop up from time to time. And actually, there's a little bit of a secret here. If you want to see the reviews early, you can check out that video feed, and as we upload them before the post goes live, you'll be able to see them a little bit earlier. So there's just a little bit of a tip for you. But this video is going longer than I would have liked it to, so I'm going to take off. Just a quickly overview of the Arganese Nicaraguan Presidente. I think it's a decent cigar. I don't particularly feel it's really worth that $7 FDS chip tax. But I thought it was good nonetheless. A little rough around the edges, but it smoothed out quite a bit. And all in all, it was a decent smoke. So Until next time, happy smoking.